let's go ahead and move on to the next part of my show today, and that is my personal ranking, chat, of the Mad Max saga. Apparently, it's a saga if there are 3 or more films in your series, and we are indeed in the saga of Mad Max and Friends. And Friends, chat, because I recently saw Mad Max, or excuse me, not Mad Max at all, chat. He's not even in the movie. Well, kind of. Maybe he is. Maybe he is. You gotta watch the film. I have recently seen Furiosa: Mad Max Saga, the first and possibly last film in the Mad Max franchise. I ended up actually really enjoying the movie. I thought Anya Taylor-Joy was very good. I thought Chris Hemsworth stole the show as Warlord Dementus, and I enjoyed a number of the action scenes and world building throughout the movie. There was some stuff that bothered me. I think it's not as well paced as some of the Mad Max films. Certainly not as well paced as Fury Road. It's just not that type of film, as Fury Road. And I thought the CGI, there was some wonky CGI throughout that movie. I was hoping more for like kind of the grounded, more realistic, stunt work, which we've seen in earlier Mad Max films, certainly in the original trilogy. I was hoping that was going to be on more display, and some of that is on display, but a lot of it is CGI and green screens, and that disappointed me to a certain extent. However, I still ended up really enjoying the movie and really liking the film, and one that I recommend people seeing, although not a lot of people have been seeing it yet. I'm doing this, ranking. We're kind of doing this under sad circumstances because apparently Furiosa looks like it's going to be one of the biggest box office bombs this year, which is quite sad because I ended up actually enjoying the movie, digging it quite a bit, and I recommend a lot of people checking it out. But it is just one film within the saga of Mad Max, and as I said, I've seen every single film in this series, and I have a lot to say about each one. One thing I will say is I don't think there is a bad film in the Mad Max saga. I think there's one film I would say this is definitely the weakest one, and it has a host of issues, and I'll detail all of those things in just a bit. But even at the end of the day, it's this is still a fun watch. There's still some enjoyment that you can be had from it. There's some fun moments, some great ideas. Maybe these great ideas aren't executed all that well by the end, but it still has a lot going through. But for the most part, I feel like this is a franchise that has a lot of wonderful entries, some genre-defying entries that go across mediums, even establishing the way in which we view a lot of post-apocalyptic worlds and in books or comic books or TV shows or films even. Video games. So, it's a franchise that has had a huge impact and one that I've always enjoyed and recently enjoyed again watching all these films of you guys for our watch party. So that was an absolute blast. But let's go ahead and start with number 5, Chad, because there's 5 Mad Max movies total. Could be more someday, might not be more someday, we'll see. But let's start with number 5, and I kind of start off by talking about, at least referring to this one, except by name. And at number 5, chat, at the bottom, I have Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's the 3rd film in the series, part of the 3rd chapter in the original trilogy. And look, even though it takes the aesthetic of the Road Warrior, which I do love, that was kind of, when you think of post-apocalyptic content in general, you think of the Road Warrior first. And that just, proliferated, just people wearing hot leather in the desert, fighting over gasoline, fighting over gasoline. And this movie, again, picks off sometime after that film came out in 85, so it was 4 or so years after the original movie. And this movie was made under pretty strenuous circumstances for a lot of people involved, including George Miller, who had lost a friend at the time. He even says he can't really recall making this film for a variety of reasons. Mel Gibson apparently didn't have a lot of confidence in this project, and he struggled to make this movie as well, allegedly being drunk on set and somewhat belligerent. And the movie in general, it's a movie that seems to be in constant it has this constant issues of balancing its two main plots, where the first part of this movie is about Mad Max going to Bartertown, which is being run by Tina Turner's character. I think we can all safely say probably the best thing about the film is Tina Turner. She has that presence. I think she is a solid actress. She's an interesting character within the wasteland. She's not just your typical, go-to warlord who's gonna, rape and pillage and murder, etc. She has higher ambitions, aspirations. She wants to have this Bartertown be a mecca for everyone in the Australian wasteland. There's some interesting things there. I like that. But the first part of that movie is Mad Max kind of coming to know and understand Bartertown, meeting all these interesting characters, fighting in the Thunderdome, coming to his own, kind of understanding the laws of the land, if you will, fighting Master Blaster and all that. And then the second half of the movie, after he's exiled from Bartertown, chat, after the events of fighting in Thunderdome, he then is sent out into the desert to pretty much die, but he's saved by this community of children, this tribe of children that have been living in this oasis hidden in the desert for years. And you come to learn that they're the survivors of this plane crash as the apocalypse was going down. Their parents found this oasis, told them to stay there, and they went off in the desert trying to find help, and they all fucking died. And so these kids just been pretty much living there for God knows how many years at this point, but to the point where they've kind of turned their whole experiences on that plane, what happened with their parents and the pilot, Captain Walker, into their own religion. So again, it's an interesting idea. And Max comes across these kids. They all think he's Captain Walker there to take them back to the promised land, which is actually Sydney, Australia, which is where they originally came from. And he's like, I want nothing to do with this. But inevitably, Max, despite being a rogue, despite, being a bit of a scoundrel, he still has a heart of gold, and he likes kids. And so inevitably helps these kids. And, but in order to properly help them, he needs to make sure that Bartertown is taken out of the picture because, Tina Turner, she wants to spread across the wasteland. They would definitely find this oasis, and they would take it over and most likely exploit these kids, killing them or, selling them into slavery, God knows what. And so he's got to, take one enemy out in order to help these group of kids, find their holy land, the promised land, right? And again, I think those two plot lines, while interesting, kind of conflict with one each other, and there's just kind of this tonal whiplash throughout the movie. It's we'll kill a fucking kid. We'll straight up kill a kid. We'll have him get sucked into this sand trap in this quicksand. He'll be dead. just oh my God. But the next minute we'll have a henchman who just refuses to die, who might as well be Bugs Bunny or Daffy Duck from Looney Tunes. It's this is the goofiest movie in the franchise. It's the one that feels the most mainstream and corporate. It takes out a lot of the grit, a lot of the darkness that the previous two films in the series established, that became such an important part of the world of Mad Max. Again, it's a fun watch, especially if you're on edible, especially if you've had a few drinks, fun to watch with friends. It's not an awful movie, but it's by far the weakest film in this entire franchise. And I hadn't seen it in years, so just rewatching again, I'm okay, I feel confident in placing it in the fifth place, in last place. But still, overall, it's a fun little movie. Then moving on to number 4, in fourth place, I have the most recent Mad Max movie, or Mad Max spinoff film, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. So, I've talked about this film at length over the last few days, having only seen it, last week, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. I think it's safe to say, one of the biggest standouts of the previous film in this franchise, which was Mad Max Fury Road, the biggest standout in terms of characters was Charlize Theron's Furiosa. I mean, she actually is the main character of that movie. Max himself playing more of a secondary character throughout that film, and that is due to a variety of reasons, mostly because Tom Hardy, who since replaced Mel Gibson as Mad Max and is playing that character, was very difficult to work with on set, refused to say his lines, constantly arguing with both George Miller and Charlize Theron. Inevitably, because of that situation, Charlize Theron's Furiosa just got more to do and more to say because of Tom Hardy's on-set behavior, which is sad. But at the same time, what a great character to introduce us to within this world. I think a lot of people could say and argue that Furiosa is one of the best supporting characters in the entire series. I don't think that's hyperbolic to say. And so, with talk that they were going to do a spin-off film about Furiosa. Like, I thought that was actually pretty cool. It's like, all right, great, except, now it's 9 years later. I feel like they were going to do it immediately afterwards, but due to a variety of other issues and I think like litigation at one point and how George Miller's production team was supposed to be paid a certain amount of money and they weren't, and so that went to litigation. It was a whole mess. But here we are, nearly a decade later. They just released this film, and not with Charlize Theron playing Furiosa. This is a prequel. This is detailing the events that led up to Fury Road, that created Imperator Furiosa, and I would say for the most part, George Miller and company did a really good job. I think Anya Brown, I think that's the actress who played even younger Furiosa. She does a great job. Anya Taylor-Joy, though she doesn't get as much dialogue as I would have liked. She's very good. She's very intense. She's an excellent Charlize Theron impression, which you don't really think about, like doing an impression of Charlize Theron, but she fucking nailed it to the point where even before I saw the movie, I was just seeing the trailers, like, did they get Charlize Theron to narrate some of this? No, it's Anya Taylor-Joy. So great job. I think the standout of the entire movie is Chris Hemsworth as Warlord Dementus, a very different take on a Mad Max villain, one who is not the end-all, be-all, ultimate bad guy of the wasteland. He's more of a schemer. He knows that he's not the biggest warlord out there. He has to scheme his way into all these things. He has to use his charisma to get what he thinks he's owed, what he wants. And I really liked him. He's very charismatic, very funny. And even though he does a number of despicable things in this movie, anytime he's on screen, he's the one that you're most attracted to, you're most interested in. He's a great character and a great villain, and one of Chris Hemsworth's best roles. The movie, I think, again, does a lot of great world building. I really enjoy how they explain some of these different societies and how they have all their different customs. That's always pretty interesting to me in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. It does do some of the, hey, remember this? Some of this is how this happened, and this is how she got her arm. It's like, I get it. I don't need all of that. And the other thing that I think is weak about the movie is its use of CGI. It's like, listen, and despite what some people say, like there is a lot of CGI that's used in Fury Road, but it was used at most of the time, because there were some shots was like, that's a little too much, a little too gratuitous, the CGI. But most of the time it was there to assist the practical effects that were already, obviously on screen. This one, it's just, there's a lot of CGI, there's a lot of green screen. It kind of takes you out of the movie. It's like, I realized, like, I'm not in a desert right now. This wasn't actually shot outside. This was shot on the soundstage. And that takes away from the overall experience. But still, at the same time, it's a really entertaining movie. You got some great performances throughout, some really cool world building. But that's why it's at number 4 for me. At number 3, Chad, this one I had to really think about. I had to really think about this. And this movie was kind of going back and forth with the one after it, number 2. But I was like, you know what? Let's keep it at number 3. Let's keep it at number 3. In the third place, chat, at number 3, I have the original Mad Max, released in 1979. So here's the thing about this movie. It's the most different out of all the films within the franchise. Obviously, how this movie came to be is pretty weird. They originally, I think, were shooting a documentary about all the George Miller and his collaborators were shooting like a documentary about like just cars and people like building these kind of weird contraptions and cars, like using them for battles. They thought, hey, why don't we just make a movie like using these vehicles? And they found a young actor in Mel Gibson who was like 21 or 22 at the time, and they came up with Mad Max, which is not a post-apocalyptic film. It's definitely set in a dystopian society. It's just like civilization's still going on, but it's obviously sick. There's something wrong with it. Like in these smaller towns, like you have these very small police forces. They're dwindling. You have these roaming motorcycle gangs that are in other gangs and things and criminals that are harassing all these various towns and neighborhoods, doing what they want with the population, like literally like robbing from them or raping them or murdering them in many cases. And that's where we come to meet, Mad Max, Max Rockatonksi, who is just trying to be the best police officer that he can possibly be, trying to stop these criminals, but also trying to create a safe home and environment for his family, his young wife and his son Sprague, which is, what a name. I don't know why you want a name. You have a cool name like Max Rockatonski and you're going to name him Sprague? I'm like, come on, man. Maybe the wife named him that way. I'm not sure. But it's, they were limited by budgets. They can only do so much. But I really like just the grounded nature of the film. I love how weird the villains are. Toe Cutter in this game. They kind of start off like initially it's kind of like pranksters and obnoxious like people. But it's like, they quickly go from like being pranksters and obnoxious people to like straight up just we're rapists and we're murderers and we're going to steal whatever we want, harass anyone we want, just do all these horrific things. They become pretty despicable by the halfway point of the movie, just what they do. But it laid the foundation for the franchise. It's interesting because so often we think of just Mad Max as this. It's post-apocalyptic. It's people fighting over gasoline. Everyone's wearing animal skins and hot leather. It's like kind of cool to see what happened just like a few years before the events of the Road War. Like, okay, clearly the society is on the brink of collapse. And here is just a little window into that world as it's about to completely fall apart due to a variety of factors: war, nuclear, devastation, things, and resource, fighting over minimal resources. Like it's pretty cool. I really enjoy the movie, and that's why it's at in my third place. It's at number 3, but at number 2, and this is the one it was fighting with the longest time. And I think I was like, all right, let's put this in number 2. At number 2, in second place, I have Mad Max Fury Road. I know for a lot of people, this is probably their number 1, but there's a big reason why it's not number 1 for me. And to get that out of the way, the reason why it's not at number 1 for me is because Mad Max is the least interesting character and thing in this movie. and I feel like Tom Hardy was woefully miscast as this character. And just because of how he acted on set and how he just basically refused to say his lines and was so much trouble for both George Miller and his co-star, Charlize Theron, he inevitably becomes the weakest thing in this entire film. Thankfully, this movie makes up for his weak performance by doing nearly everything else right, introducing us to a wonderful supporting cast of supporting characters and tertiary characters, most prominently in Charlize Theron's Furiosa, who is the lead in this movie, who does such a great job. But you also have all these villains like Immortan Joe, who's established this home base of the Citadel. He has access to fresh water, the aqua cola as he calls it. Chad. He has his harem of wives. He has all these people, these subjects that worship him. He has his war boys who literally will die for him at a moment's notice. We live, we die, we live again. Witness me, like all of that. It's like it's really really cool world building. They don't overexplain it. He just kind of introduces this world and they kind of let you just kind of soak in and be like, wow, this is so crazy. I loved all that. So many of the action scenes are incredible. There's a reason why this movie is beloved in the film community, especially for its action sequences and how they're all crafted and put together, from all the vehicle carnage to like just kind of the one-on-one fight scenes between certain characters. There is, despite what some people say, there is CGI in this movie. But most of the time, it's used to assist the practical effects, and it looks pretty good. There's only a couple times where the CGI was just like, there's like this one shot, it's right near the very end. It's before Max and everyone goes back to the Citadel. It's this one shot where they have that huge car crash after Nux flips the war rig, and it's where all this CGI metals come at the screen. I'm just like, I don't like that scene. I was like, I wish they would have taken that out because that just felt unnecessary. Funny enough, we see like a lot of those types of scenes in Furiosa, sadly. But outside of some iffy CGI occasionally, it's not always very noticeable. And Tom Hardy's, performance, the movie is just so good, so entertaining. It's incredibly well paced. I know some people have just said, listen, it's just point A to point B, then back to point A again. And it's like, sure, but there's never a moment where you feel bored while watching the film. It's pretty much as action goes in the next action and goes in the next action. You might have like these little breaks in between, but most of the time we're right back in the action and we're seeing something like really visually stunning. And so the movie just has a lot going for it, and it's great. And for a lot of people, it's their number 1 film in the franchise. It's not number 1 for me because my number 1. My favorite Mad Max movie of all time is Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. I feel like this is the movie that obviously set the aesthetic and tone for the entire franchise, for just Mad Max in general. Just what this world would look like, this post-apocalyptic world. It's no longer dystopia. At this point, the war, nuclear devastation, and resource fighting has occurred, over these limited resources. And now people are just roaming the wasteland, wearing very tight black leather, fighting over guzzling, Chad, as they like to call it. Not gasoline, guzzling. And we have Mad Max, the road warrior, the lone wanderer, the wastelander, just going from place to place, just trying to eke out whatever existence he possibly can, running away from his past traumas. Chad, his only companion, a dog, which he's trained, and occasionally coming upon these fucking weirdos like the gyro captain, or these weird communities of wastelanders who are clearly all very incestuous and are fucking each other, because especially if you look at them, you're like, you all look the same, and helping them out, and coming across all these, warlords or would-be warlords like Lord Humongous and their gang of people, and they're just monologue. It also just set what I think people's expectations were and the aesthetics of a post-apocalyptic environment. And we've seen that across numerous other franchises and films in different mediums too. Not only in movies, obviously, what we often think of like a post-apocalyptic environment, but also in books and comics and video games. I mean, we wouldn't have the Fallout series without Mad Max, and other films, certainly like, A Boy and His Dog, which they took a lot from that too, there's no doubt. But, I feel like Mad Max, it created the aesthetic that we so often see, popularized the aesthetic we so often see in so much post-apocalyptic content, but it's also just a really good movie. I like how it initially starts with a great action scene with Mad Max fighting against the lieutenant of Lord Humongous's horde, and then him meeting the gyro captain, coming upon that community, and then feeling like, well, I can exploit these guys if I bring one of their survivors back and get some gasoline for myself, and it just I think it just has great pacing, wonderful world building, some really memorable just pieces of dialogue in like certain scenes, like Lord Humongous's whole just speech, just walk away. It's just like, I don't know. I think that we can maybe trust this guy. He's very charismatic. To like other recognizable characters, like the feral kid, who's just so awesome and so amazing. Fucking kills what's his name, Bennett from Commandos, is his boy toy's boyfriend. From his perspective, he's the hero of the movie, Chad. He's just trying to avenge his boyfriend. It's just, and then it has like these wonderful choreographed action sequences that have aged very well, even though they're over 40 years old now at this point. The movie came out in 1981, over 40 years old, and they still look really good. Like, all the action, looks great, and the cinematography is impeccable. It's a wonderful, you can really see, George Miller as a filmmaker and all of his collaborators, how, wow, you really stepped up from the original Mad Max movies. They created the movie they wanted to make all those years ago, back in 1979. They achieved that, I feel like, in 1981. I mean, Mel Gibson is incredibly, this is the way he's at his best as the character. It's like, yeah, he's a scoundrel, he's a rogue, but he still has that charisma, and he still kind of has that heart of gold where, he's still dealing with the trauma of losing his wife and his child under horrific circumstances, and he has a soft spot for people in need, and certainly for kids. And we see that across the entire film. It's a great movie. It's a movie that I'm thinking about, do I have any complaints about it? It's like, I don't. I really don't what do I think that, is there a thing in the movie that I think it doesn't do very well? I'm just like, I think it executes everything. And that's the reason why why Fury Road to me is below Road Warrior, because, the weakest thing about Fury Road is Mad Max himself. And so even though it does everything else wonderfully, this movie does everything wonderfully. From Mel Gibson's performance as Mad Max, to all the secondary and tertiary characters, to the world building, to the stunts, to the stunt work, to the choreography and cinematography, and a great score as well. It's just one of the quintessential movies from the 1980s, and just one of the quintessential just sci-fi films of all time. It's a movie that had such a profound impact on the subgenre, but just on the subgenre across different mediums. And so, yeah, that's why for me, The Road Warrior is my number one favorite Mad Max movie in the Mad Max saga. But what about you guys? What's your personal top 5 for Mad Max? How would you rank all these films? I'm very curious about that. Would you have Road Warrior number 1? Would you have it at the bottom? I know a lot of people probably have Fury Road at the top, but I have to be honest with myself. I have to be truthful. Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior is my favorite movie. But what about you guys?
5 minutes later.
Let me see what you guys are saying right now. Lisa, hard hands. Good to see you, Lisa. Hope you're doing well. Just we need the gasoline. Need that gasoline. Boo, we mean boo. Let's see what people are saying. Ace Rock, I watched The Road Warrior the other night, and I got the sense that the gas tankers were the basis of the idea of Gastown, and that Humongous has a lot in common with Dr. Good old Lord Dementis. I like to call him Dr. Dementis. Yeah. Which says, yep, anime and manga inspired Fist of the North Star. Oh, yeah, sure, yeah, definitely manga. That's another good point. Hope you're doing well, Lisa. Good to see you. Road Warrior is also way more homoerotic. Oh, it's super homoerotic. Yeah, I mean, you literally have Bennett from Commando. Like, his whole purpose for hating Max in this community is they kill his boyfriend. Like, he's like, fuck you. It's super homoerotic. I feel like a lot of the movies are, though. I feel like maybe not so much in Thunderdome or like Fury Road, but in the first two, definitely. In the first two, yeah, there is a lot of homoeroticism. And the second one, they're just waving it. They're just like, of course. But it works. Because honestly, in this world where there seems to be so few women, they would be like, fuck it, you know. I was like, let's try it. I feel like that's what happened. Yeah. I love seeing him in the feral kid. It's such a great, it's not, and they have instant chemistry. And the Max, like, he's like, that's like one of the first characters he's actually like really nice to, because he's thinking of his own son in that scene. He gives him the gift, and also Max is like, you did a pretty badass thing there, kid, with the boomerang and stuff. And that from that point on, the feral kid has Max's back throughout the movie. The feral kid is very competent. He's not like a kid that needs to be saved. Matter of fact, he saves Max's life more than Max saves his, which is pretty cool. And so, like, when he gives him the music box and when he's like kind of teasing him, but in a nice way, it all works out really well. Yeah, one of the best interactions, one of the best kind of relationships in the films, especially him and the gyro captain. I love that relationship across the movie. Oh, Justin Dan, good to have you here. Welcome. You can call me a normie, but Fury Road is the only Mad Max movie I've sat with. Really? Oh, Isaac, I recommend watching. At the very least, The Road Warrior. I feel like for some people, like Mad Max might be a little slow for them. It's very weird, but I like that. I like this. This is a fucking weird movie. Just certain, like, because they were limited what they could do, but I appreciate what they can do. What they ended up doing with some of their like sets and stuff, even though like they're clearly filming in abandoned buildings. It's like, this is crazy looking. But like, you should give Road Warrior a chance. Road Warrior is really fucking good. I mean, it's my favorite. But yeah, I think most people have probably seen Fury Road. Where does Mad Max video game fit in? I never played it. I own it, but I've never played it, and so I cannot rank it. One day I'll check it out. Road Warrior is my favorite, with Fury Road and Furiosa tied for second, says Ace Rock. Very nice. Fury Road is my first Mad Max. I feel like people who are probably younger than me, who are Gen Z and younger, their first Mad Max was the original, or excuse me, was Fury Road. Most definitely. GC says, from worst to best, Beyond Thunderdome, Mad Max, 79, Furiosa, Road Warrior, Fury Road, the only one I give an A+ or better than Sex 2, says GC. Lisa, here's little Garfield. Fury Road's still at the top. I saw that in middle school. It was a world-changing experience. I feel like we have for a lot of people. Says Bugstaff. Baby Spike, we pretty much have the same list. It's just neck and neck of Road Warrior and Fury Road is number one, since it's hard to choose one. Sure. Colonizer, it's me. Lots of assless chat. Oh, shit ton. In terms of the amount of bare cheeks in any of the Mad Max films, Road Warrior has the most. Road Warrior definitely has the most bare cheeks, I would say. Yeah. And usually it's cheeks you don't want to see. Sierra Spa, great salutation. Hope you're living long, prospering. A pleasure to have you in the chat. Hope you're doing well. Oh, yeah, and the only thing we disagree on is Tom Hardy. I like him as Mad Max. I agree with Bugstaff. He worked as a kind of slapstick way, especially in the action set pieces. I mean, I feel like that's what is at his strongest, but it's almost like he had to do those scenes. You know, but you know, yeah. I just feel like he's the weakest thing in that movie. I just feel like you could have replaced him with like any actor that would have given you the same performance, because I feel like it's such a bare minimum of performance. Where I compare him to just Mel Gibson's character. Like Mel Gibson's character is just charismatic. You just instantly get that. from him, whether it be in the first movie, the second movie, or even the weakest film in the franchise, but I still think it's Thunderdome. But I still feel like he's giving a much better performance as Hardy. He just seemingly has just more, even though I feel like Tom Hardy probably had a lot to do, he just refused to do it. But even in Thunderdome, which is the weakest one, I still felt like Mel Gibson was trying, despite probably not liking making that movie, which is very funny. I think of the feral kid growing up into that's the only thing that makes it sense to me. It's just like, this is just not that Mad Max. Like, I think it would make more sense if this is either the feral kid or just another person that assisted with this, but now Max has just become this mythological legendary figure that people just said it was Max. I almost prefer that. Like, maybe that Mad Max, the Mel Gibson Mad Max, like, he's gone now and he's been dead for years or something, but he's just larger than life. He's a legend. If they do that approach from now on for the franchise, I think I'd be fine with that. But like, it's just hard for me to buy that is that Mad Max, because they're just not the same person. Yeah. And they even showed the music box Furiosa when Zoe Kravitz was holding it. Yep. Mad Max is really paced in such an odd way. The movie, it's very Australian. Yeah. Dingoes, crikey, shrimp in the bar, but you better believe it. Was there an Outback Steakhouse Mad Max world? I don't believe so. Fear of the new Furiosa movie are only two I've seen of this series, but it's a great visual experience, as Corbin. I recommend watching the original films. They're very easy to find. Jesus, I Fear in middle school with my dad without seeing any of the Max movies. I mean, yeah, you can go into any of the Mad Max films without seeing the previous ones. Like, you can even watch The Road Warrior and you'll be fine. It's almost, in a weird way, it's kind of like, I think Chris Ayres and other people have compared it to like the Evil Dead franchise. It's very similar to Evil Dead, where you can watch either entry and by itself and be pretty good. And certainly it's the case for like the Road Warrior. I mean, so much so where they didn't even originally call it the Road Warrior when they released it like internationally. Or excuse me, they didn't call it Mad Max 2 initially because they thought like just have it be its own thing. Since so many people had not seen the original Mad Max like internationally. So I think it's kind of cool. You think Chris Hemsworth would have been a good Max instead? So I think he's great as Lord Dementus. He does such a great job. And I'm glad he played that character. But to answer your question, yeah, he would have made a much better Mad Max. I feel like he just seems like, yeah, I'm fucking game. Let's do this. He seemed to work really well. I mean, George Miller has had nothing but kind things to say about him. So much so he's like, yeah, I fucking direct Thor 5 with him. Yeah, which I don't know, maybe that might happen now. Which I'll get into just a bit. But yeah, I think Hemsworth would have made a great Mad Max if they chose to go down that road. I wouldn't mind that. Hell, they could do it anyway. I wouldn't care. But that's just me. Some people are like, but he was only this character. I'm like, just fucking do it anyway. Hamilton Burger, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. I'll be on Thunderdome as appropriate to know because after the Thunderdome match, it turns into Peter. That's what it is. It's two movies in conflict with itself. Turns out those bike chariots are a real thing. Nice. Apparently, Sprague's an old Australian slang for child, so Max's kid's name just means kid. That's really funny. Yeah, well, here's the thing, though, chat. With Furiosa, sadly, looking like it's going to be a box office bomb, which is a shame, because even though I had a couple issues with the movie, I think overall it's a really entertaining film, one I recommend people checking it out. I think you're going to like it more than not, But it puts into question what's going to happen to the Mad Max franchise. Because I think even George Miller said, like, we're kind of in a wait-and-see period if they're going to do Mad Max The Wasteland. But, I mean, look, how it's looking right now, this movie is not going to do well. I mean, commercially that is. Critically, most people are singing its praises. I'm singing its praises. I really enjoyed it, despite a couple misgivings, despite a couple issues. Overall, I thought it's a great film. Very entertaining movie. But most likely, it's not going to make its money back. It's going to lose money. It looks like most likely it's going to be a box office bomb. It's like, okay, if they're going to make another, which they may not, this might be it. Furiosa, Mad Max Saga might be it for this entire franchise. If they're going to go for, I guess, the other thing you got to think about too, they have to be like, all right, they need to approach this, I think, in an intelligent way. One, and this is something I think we all need to just kind of realize. It's like Mad Max, is not a huge blockbuster franchise, and nor has it been, with maybe aside from the original one, which the original Mad Max, not to say like the other ones didn't make money, they did, but the original Mad Max is the most commercially successful film in the entire series. It was made for $300,000. The film went on to make $100 million worldwide over time, right? But you look at all the other films, like Road Warrior had a little bit more budget. It did fine. It made some money, but did not make $100 million worldwide, save for Thunderdome. Fury Road, which of course came out 30 years later after the release of Thunderdome, from 1985 to 2015. That was very expensive, especially if you compared all the budgets across the Mad Max films. Got what cost between they say between 150 to 180 plus $million, probably because of all the production issues that they were having, principal photography issues they were having, and also this litigation behind the scenes. That movie made what, $380 million, between 350, 380. So it made a little bit of a profit, but it's never been a blockbuster franchise. And so that's why I remember, like, even months before, as we were talking about Furiosa, reacting to all the trailers, I was just like, I was so confused as to why this movie had a budget of like $160 plus million, even though like your last film that you made 9 years ago cost just as much, if not more, and it didn't cross like $400 million. I was very surprised that they opted to give it the same level of budget, and I'm sure they're probably asking themselves that exact question right now, because it looks like it's probably not going to make it's not going to do well, sadly, and I'm saying that's someone who actually really enjoyed the film and actually encouraged people to check it out. If they were going to move forward with another movie, let's say if they do, because I don't know if they even will now at this point, but saying they did, I think the smart choice would be to make that movie on a much smaller budget. They would have to now. A lot of people are arguing like, oh, the reason why the movie didn't do well is because it didn't have Mad Max in it. I'm just like, the original one didn't make nearly as much money as people like to think it did. But in any case, I feel like what would be really cool, and I don't know if George Miller would be up for this, but I fucking would be 100%. I would love it if they decided, like, you know what? Okay, let's go more back to basics. Let's pull back a little bit. Let's not have all this crazy, CGI green screen stuff. Let's pull back a little bit. And let's actually shoot this movie for like $50 million, which I feel like would be more than enough to make a Mad Max style movie, especially in the same style that they made it back in the day. Like, I would kind of love a return to the world and the aesthetic and even the pacing of something like the original Road Warrior. I feel like that would be really, really cool. And I feel like it wouldn't be that big of a risk if you're only making it for $50 or so million. It's like if they made Furiosa for like $50 million and the movie made what, 31 million, 32 million, and it's for people going like, that's a fucking huge success. It did pretty well. Plus internationally, but they didn't, because they had all these huge bombastic, special effects and blew up the budget and had all these big stars, in it. But if they were to kind of, I don't know, I feel like pull back a little bit, and instead go back to the style of the original movies, using Road Warrior as the template, I think that would be awesome. I would love that if the next movie it's like, okay, this is not going to be as huge and bombastic as a Furiosa, even though probably the fan base is now just accustomed, that's what they expect. I'm that guy saying, like, I wouldn't mind if you pull back and you did something on a much smaller scale, as did for those original movies, which are still, pretty awesome what they were able to do with the little money that they had. I think that would be great. So yeah, if they're going to do another film, I would prefer if it harkens back to the original movies, Road Warrior in particular, shoot it for $50 million, if not less. They could probably shoot it for even less than that. I think that would be really cool. There's a lot you can get away with for $50 million. That's a substantial amount of money, I feel like. And I feel like you can do a lot of cool shit with $50 million. Probably even cooler shit than you did back in 1981. I wouldn't be surprised. That's what I would like. But what about you guys? You think that's a crazy idea? As if they do make another one, should they actually pull back? Should they instead harken back to maybe the original films in the series, particularly the Road Warrior? Or are you just like, no, it has to be like Fury Road, it has to be like Furiosa? What say you guys? That's what you guys are saying here. George Miller's already working on the next one. I thought he said he was in a wait-and-see period. Maybe he is working on the next one, but I mean, I don't know, like, to what degree they're in pre-production. Honestly, for as much as I love Furiosa, I knew it wasn't going to do well. Fury Road wasn't the smash hit either. Yep. Fury Road came out to compete against Pitch Perfect 2, which had a much bigger audience and destroyed Fury Road at the box office. Adulter was in its third week, and that's something that's, yeah. Let's see, this is Warner Brothers. Warner Bros. We're hoping word of mouth spreads. I don't know if it's going to be enough. I feel like that's because prices are going up and the price of making a movie like Fury Road. Sure. I mean, the economy's awful right now. It's really bad. This is one of the few franchises where I would actually like to see them go back and redo do a reboot of Mad Max. Man, I don't know. I would like more stories in it, but I don't know. Like do a reboot. I think you can make a $10 million Mad Max. I would love to see that. I'd love to see them do like something that's really kind of relatively low budget. Yeah. Well, they have to make those crazy vehicles for the movie. Those have a cost. I mean, but you look at like the crazy vehicles. Like, look at the crazy vehicles they had in like Mad Max, the original Mad Max, or even the Road War. Some of those vehicles look fucking awesome. And that movie's budget was what? Let me see. I know you got to adjust for inflation, everything, etc. But let me look up the Road War really quickly, and I'll continue reading your guys' comments. The Road Warrior, 1981. So the Road Warrior had a budget of $4.5 million, and then it went on to have a box office of like $36 million. So it made money. There's no doubt. Made several times over its original budget and then some, and continued to do well on probably VOD for many years to come and stuff. But I mean, I know you got just for inflation, $4.5 million. How much is? Let me look it up. Just for example, How much is 4.5 million from 1981 worth today? Let's see what that would be. So, let's see here. That's not what I want. It doesn't know. 4.5 or 4. I'll put 4 million. How about that? Let's see here. So that would equal 15 million basically. $15 million in today's money. So they can do it. They can absolutely do it. I think so. I agree with you about everything. They said, yay! That's how it should be. Apparently, if they do another one, it was going to be called Mad Max the Way. Oh yeah, for years it was. Yeah, that was known. Mad Max the Wasteland. Well, why don't I make it? I should. That's another thing to say that I think you get more creative, especially if the action you pull everything. I want them to pull back, yeah, because I feel like, because George, I know there's a lot of issues as to why they couldn't shoot on location. They had to use CGI and green screen because they couldn't shoot where they wanted to, and that's why the movie looks like it does. But yeah, I feel like if you have more limitations, you got to be a little more clever with it. I feel like they had to be with something like a Mad Max or like a Road War. They had to be clever. How do I think Furiosa doing the second weekend? Not well. Not well at all. Warner Bros. Would love to hear what you got. I would tell them. I would love to be one of their contributors. George Miller's 80 years old. I'm not sure he has another one in him. He's 80 years old, but he seems pretty fucking spry. I feel like he could do another one, but it would definitely not be. He would not have as much money to play around with if they were doing another one. Blumhouse's Mad Max. Yeah. Wiki says Warner is the distributor. Do distributors spend money making the film? Well, they're not just the distributor of the movie. They're who's behind? Let me see. Is Warner Bros. Solely the distributor of Mad Max? And yes, they do make money off of it. Let's see here. The distributor production company is Kenny Miller Mitchell. What it means. So maybe they have like the licensing to distribute the film. Who else here? Katria Hot Hands. Good to see you. Hey, Chris. Hey, Chad. Just got some talking to my mom's birthday present. Oh, that's super nice. It's a great Mommy's Day present. Hell yeah. Or for your birthday present, I should say. Oh, let's see here. Who else is here? Like John Wick. Yeah, they gotta. That's the thing. They gotta think about this franchise like John Wick. That's what they should. And I think like a lot of like studios. They need to adopt that John Wick mentality. I'm not saying like make a movie like John Wick. I'm not saying like everything just should be John Wick now. It's like no, like how they made those movies for relatively little money. I know like the last one cost like $100 million, but like how they worked up to that, because each film made more money than the last one, and they started off making these relatively low budget, and they turned a profit. Like don't approach this franchise filmmaking like, all right, we're gonna invest $200 million and expect to make $1 billion, at the end of it. It's like I don't think they should approach it that way. They should be a lot smarter about this. Like instead of making like $150 million one movie, like make 10 movies that cost $15 million each. I feel like that's a much smarter way to go about it. I feel like there's less risk involved with that. I think that's what I would honestly prefer. Do another happy feet. Oh, Lord. Village Roadshow, Village Mills Production Company. They probably just greenlit and gave it the production budget. Yeah, we'll see. It's also not going to help furiosa when Bad Boys Ride Right comes out and got a bigger audience. The Bad Boys films is more accessible and pop. Yeah. No, there's a lot of like right now this week it's pretty bare in terms of new releases, but I think what's out of the gate after this week? Something big, right? Is it Bad Boys? Is that the next one? I think that's the next one. Loading. Let's see. Scrolling. Scrolling. But yeah, so yeah, the next big one is Bad Boys Ride or Die. That's the big one. So that's going to take. And then Inside Out 2 is the week afterwards. And then, that's the big one. Those are the two big ones. Then you got A Quiet Place towards the end of the month, which I'm very curious to see how that's going to do, which is that franchise has done extraordinarily well. So there you go. Warner Bros. I was right. They own the rights to the franchise. Okay, I thought so. So, yeah, I don't, if I were to say right now, are they going to make another Mad Max movie? No, they're not. If they're going to make another one, and I think this is what they should do, they should make it on a smaller budget. I think that's what they should absolutely do instead of giving it 100. Like I couldn't believe when I read that this budget was 100. Plus, you got to also think of marketing for the movie too, which is, who knows which that could be, but a significant amount of money. So let's be conservative and say that they spent overall, including marketing, I'll say $200 million. They probably spent more than that, but $200 million. And it might, and this movie may just cross over 200 million, like worldwide, maybe. But I don't know. If I was Warner Bros. At this point, if I were going to do another one, do it for like a third of the. I do it third of it, but can you do it for a third of the budget? Can you do it for $50 million and do it more akin to like the original Mad Max, or excuse me, certainly those films, but like The Road Warrior. Can you achieve that? That's what I would like. But they're not going to give another Mad Max film another 100. If they do, that would be irresponsible. that would be hugely irresponsible. If they were to do another film and give it a $150 million budget. I don't even want that personally. I know some people like they just want like another Fury Road, but I don't know if you're ever going to get that. And I don't think I even need that or want that. I wouldn't mind if they went smaller again. They did something more akin to The Road. I think that'd be really cool. Some people won't like that, but I would. Well, mind that else is The Road Warrior. Technically, that is my favorite film in the entire franchise. So we'll see. But if they do another one, make it for significantly less money. Let's cap it at no more than $50 million. And I think if you make something for no more than $50 million, then I think you can probably make some money. I think that'd be good. Oh, man. I think the new ones are trying to be bombastic for the sake of a theater experience. Well, it's like watching the movie, which again, I really like this, but there's just there are a lot of scenes, a lot of the big bombastic sequences that are just CGI where it's just like, they could have taken that out and the movie probably would have been better for it, to be perfectly honest. Like they could have taken out all those scenes and done something that was a little smaller in scale. I think the movie would have been better for it, but Yeah, we'll see. So, yeah, I don't know what the future of this franchise is. Overall, I really like the franchise, chat. I don't think that there's a bad entry in it. You know, Thunderdome is the weakest, but I wouldn't, and it's a goofy fucking movie, believe me. But there's a lot of interesting things in there. There's a lot of fun stuff in there. But I think other than maybe Thunderdome, like all the other films within this series, I think are quite good and are, if not amazing and great. And I certainly think that's the case with The Road Warrior, which is my favorite Mad Max movie.